Hi, everybody, and thank you for. I think my mic is actually on now. Before it was just my big mouth. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the 9th annual Startup Boston Week. The mission of the conference is simple: to bring people and together across the entire startup community, every industry, department, and funding stage. Startup Boston exists to connect, educate, and celebrate this ecosystem, while serving as a trusted, unbiased guide to the best resources that can help you start and scale your startup. My name is Linda Brown. I am a serial startup person. I come here because I love the energy. I love to hear what everyone's talking about with their ideas. I've been through 3 successful exits and 4 mergers and acquisitions we don't have to get into details about, but if you want to ask me after a beer tonight, that's, probably the better venue for that. They sometimes go well and sometimes don't. Before we kick things off, I want to make sure that I say a huge thank you to Suffolk University. Being able to have one place where we can all come and attend all these sessions and not have to travel all over the city is really wonderful. So thank you to them. And if you're interested in exploring entrepreneurship more, they offer a variety of programs and opportunities. They have a table in the vendor hall on the 5th floor if you want to check that out. So that's about all I have to say. Thank you so much for being here, and I am now going to turn it over to Sydney.
Great, thank you. Wow, this is cool. So my name is Sidney McLaurin, CEO of Fleet Robotics. So I have 3 panelists. They're really awesome today. Jody, Paul. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? All right, great. Maybe I'll be a bad example for our panelists. So get it out of the way.
Learning from your
Yeah,
example.
exactly. So panelists will get to learn on the fly. My name is Sidney McLaurin. I'm the CEO of Fleet Robotics. We have 3 awesome panelists today, Jody, Allison, and Paul. We're going to go through a little bit of a conversation about startup fundraising, sort of early stage startup fundraising. I'll be facilitating that conversation, and maybe we'll dive in with a couple of introductions, and maybe we'll just go in order. So.
Sure. I'll try to make it brief. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Byers. I'm the founder and CEO of Scroobius. Yes, I know it's a funny name. My background, this is my second startup. My first time around, I spun a medical device company out of MIT and the Leahy Hospital System here with a team of scientific co-founders. Raised about $10 million for that company. And then we ended up going to early acquisition after I experienced some extreme bias in the fundraising process, which is what caused me to launch Scroobius. And we're a platform that helps funders, founders, and partners connect through education and relationship building to open up access to resources and capital. I'm also national thought leader in equitable access to business capital. I co-authored the first law regulating venture capital out of California last year. It was SB 54, and I'm working on legislation in multiple other states right now and sit on the board of a couple nonprofits, all under the space of equitable access to capital.
Thank you. Paul?
Hi, everyone. Paul here. I did mostly medical devices for about a decade and a half, focused on tissue repair and care delivery and a little bit in pain management, non-pharmacological pain management. But 3 years ago, joined Harvard's engineering school and Office of Technology Development to create an entrepreneurship center within the engineering school to focus on tough tech venturing, so hard sciences and engineering. And that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years.
Thanks,
Finally,
Paul.
Jody.
Hi, I'm Jody Collier. I'm the Executive Director of Launchpad Venture Group. We are a network of 175 individual angels based here in the Boston area. And collectively, we put about $10 million to work into local startups that are looking for that really early pre-seed funding from individuals. And we're really excited to be an event like this and have an opportunity to meet so many founders. We have about 56 active portfolio companies at the moment, and we love to lead rounds, price rounds in the $1 to $3 million range. So it's an exciting place in the market to be, and we typically look at companies that are pretty reflective of the Boston area market. So a lot of stuff in sort of med device, in healthcare and life sciences roughly, but smaller things that are going to be a little bit less capital intensive. And then we love things in clean tech. We like ed tech and a lot of B2B software.
Great, thank you. So, Jody, why don't we start on the first question on your side? So, obviously, a lot of people in the room are thinking about raising. One of the big things is fit, right? Of finding the right investors for you. Do you have any sort of tactical advice on how to think about who might be the right investor for you, or type of capital, or?
Sure. There's a lot of things to be thinking about at the earliest stage as far as who's going to be an appropriate fit. And really, really do your research. It's going to save you guys time, and it's going to save time for the investors as well, just to really look at alignment. And, there are a lot of ways to think about it. There's non-dilutive capital. There is going to straight to venture financing. Angel investing is obviously an area near and dear to my heart that I'd love to talk with you all about. But it's really thinking about how much do you need to raise and what are you going to use it for? And that's going to help you frame who you should talk to from the very start. I'll open it up to
Yeah,
Paul
Paul,
and
Allison,
Allison.
anything on that?
I mean, I can always add. I mean, the way that I like to answer that question is your first thought should be, do I need capital at all? Because the goal of capital is to build a successful business. It's not to raise. Raising money is not the win. It is just a vehicle and a choice that you need money to grow the company in the way that you would like to grow it. So before you even think about fit, really question and understand what it means to take money from different capital sources, right? If it's debt, it costs you something. If it's equity, it costs you something. Even if it's non-dilutive, it's a grant, it costs you something. Those grants are a bitch to get through and then to manage and report. Sorry, I swear. So that's the first thing that I always go to is make sure you understand the source of the capital, what their motivation and needs are from from whatever you're giving up before you decide to go down that road. And don't get hyper focused on I must raise or I must find investors, because that is often not the right answer.
Yeah, thank you. No, but one of the things we joke internally is it's like being really excited about putting gas in your car. It's just something you kind of have to do along the way. So it makes sense. But let's say you've decided that. So let's say you've now decided you definitely need investment. Venture investment is the way you want to go. How do you think about the elements of a good fundraising process? And maybe Allison, sort of talk through that one a little bit. I mean, since you sort of chimed in on the last one, how do you think about maybe sort of 5 of the elements of a good fundraising process as you think about that?
Sure. So, well, I covered the first one. Do you need to fundraise? Then you've decided that you do. So the next thing is akin to what I said, is identify all of your different potential fundraising sources. And I'm not going to do a deep dive here, but I talk about this a lot. We're understanding, venture capital is one type. Venture capital is a business, and it is very different from raising from private wealth or from angel investors. They are not a business, and those have deep implications for what it means for you to take money from those sources. So don't just rush into saying, going for a check wherever you can. Really understand, what does this mean, and does it align with how I want to grow my business? Then you think through, okay, how much do I need to build value into my company that will get me to the next stage? So when you identify an amount to raise, it's not, I want to raise $1 million, or I've heard pre-seed is this amount. It's, what are you trying to do with that money? Because again, the money is for a purpose to build your business that should increase the value of your business for whatever the next stage is, whether it's raising more or getting revenue or whatever it is that you choose to do. Once you've determined that, then it's time to work through your story, which is your pitch, right? How do I describe to someone why I'm raising, why it's a good thing for them, because you're basically offering a chance for investors to make money off of all your hard work if they invest in you. and put that into the common, format investors are looking for, the pitch deck, because it is what lets you explain your story in a predictable format. And again, I'm happy to talk anyone's ear off about pitch decks and what goes into a story. And then you have to think through your timeline and really set up a strategy. When are you going to raise? When is it right for your company? And when is it right with investing seasonality? Because it basically follows a school cycle of active periods of investing. So you need to make sure that you're not going to run out of money for your company if you're trying to raise in the middle of the summer. You got to think about that timing. So maybe I'll stop there and let others go.
I think that's very nicely laid out, and maybe sort of doubling down on one idea is, when you're talking to investors, if you already come to the decision that you decide to talk to an investor, when you're talking to an investor, they're simply trying to answer the question of, is this person going to burn my money up, or is this person going to return to me more money than I gave? So, I think one thing that it's sort of a very novice mistake to do is this idea of not really understanding where are the deepest risk pockets or profile of what you're doing, and understanding how to mitigate that and do that very elegantly and effectively and immediately when you talk to investors. So like the title of this panel as an example is fundraising for first-time founders. And if you think about what's inherent in that topic and maybe why you came here, is the idea of the risk associated with a first-time founder. So to look at that through the eyes of the person that you're talking to, when they see a first-time founder, they're going to see a lot of risk in that. So your job is to immediately mitigate that risk. And how do you do that? Well, if it's your first time, what does that also inherently mean? If you have somebody else potentially either on your team or on your advisory board or supporting you in some way, that this is not their first time, that might have a little bit of gray hair, only meaning that they might have done some of these things before, they understand the market, they understand the customer, they understand the product, then that is a very clear and compelling way to de-risk this aspect that you're a first-time founder, and that you might have the technical chops, or you might have maybe you built the product, or you might have the market chops, whatever it is you bring to the table. There are other slices of what's necessary to get an idea launched, and that's exactly what's going to an investor is going to look at when they first talk to you. So that's what you need to figure out how to mitigate. But knowing that and coming up with a compelling but brief sort of response to mitigate that upfront, rather than sort of having a long digestion of the problem, as it were. You need to cover that in good detail and make sure it's compelling. But if that's not really where the risk is being clear and upfront about that. And frankly, that's where you sort of win or lose the deal. It's in that first few minutes where the investor already has an idea of where they perceive the biggest risk to your idea. And if that's not addressed pretty quickly and effectively early, what you say thereafter is oftentimes wasted.
If I may, Sydney, I just
course,
wanted to amplify one thing that Paul talked about, which is a board of advisors. And that is such a critical thing to think about at this earliest stage of forming your company. These are people that may really help you to tell that story, like Allison was talking about, really give you some credibility that might put investors at ease, because they can recognize, okay, gosh, this person's a first-time founder, but I've worked with this advisor before, or I can see that they were really thoughtful enough to surround themselves with some people who have figured out where the potholes are and have experienced that along the way, and bring different things to the table as far as experience and connections is the other thing, not only opening doors as far as investors are concerned, but also for customers down the pike. So that's, I think, just so critical at this point.
Can I add
So-
on? I know
yeah,
we're
sure.
taking a long time on this question, but
No, it's okay.
it's because I'm me. So just one other element. A lot of what we're talking about here is about people who already know their investors, right? When you're going to win or lose a deal or any of that. For a lot of you, how many people are for our first-time founders who are figuring this all out right now? Great.
Great.
Spot on topic. One critical thing to understand is when we're talking about angel investors, we are talking about basically anyone. Angels are everywhere. They are not businesses. They don't have to list themselves. Many angels don't even know they're angels. They aren't activated yet. It sounds silly. It's not facetious. And you get to the capital through building a relationship. There is no shortcut. It is not transactional. So by nature of doing things like building out advisors, like coming to events like this, like finding people who understand what you're doing fundamentally and who you relate to as a person, they can turn into your early capital, even if they don't call themselves investors right now and you're not pitching them. So just think broader about where investment capital might come from. You might be sitting next to an investor right now and you don't even know it.
Jody, so let's stay on this board of advisors topic for a little bit longer. I want to dive a little bit deeper because it's a topic that I think people hear a lot about, right? They're like, I should have a board of advisors. But I think as a first-time founder, you don't really know where to get a board of advisors. And there's also this sort of little rumor and sort of other sort of feeling that comes sometimes when VCs that they don't really know how close of an advisor they are, right? And so they see an advisor listed. So maybe you could talk a little bit about, how do you structure that advisor relationship and find ones that are really high value add and that really translate through in the way that you're thinking to, really value add in the fundraising process?
I'm so glad you asked that question, and I'm just sort of going to address something that has bothered me, and probably you guys have seen this, which is you see a pitch deck and there's a board of advisors listed, and you reach out and you say, "Hey, I just got this deck. What do you think about this founder? You're listed on the board of advisors," and they're like, "I'm what?" And it's so embarrassing, right, for the founder, and it's just so. Yeah, sort of short answer is make sure you have clarity on what it means to be on your board of advisors. Don't just, hijack someone's name because they have great degrees and they're well known. That's not going to work for you. Authenticity always matters. I think you guys know that. But as far as getting these relationships rolling, it can be as much as, reaching out to people who are in the field. Maybe it's, if you're a student, it's finding people who through academia that are connected in a particular environment and saying, hey, this is something I'm working on. Do you know somebody who might be interesting to talk to? And then simply asking them what sort of time they have for this and interest they have for this. And I would formalize it. I want to be able to bounce things off of you 1 hour a week, or I want to meet with you face to face, 3 times a quarter. You can think about what that might mean, but I think having someone you can really be honest with and say, I'm not sure I understand this technology, or I don't know how to get in front of this type of customer. I think that's going to really help you to have people that you can really count on, be yourself, and that will really help your company grow. I love seeing people who are exited founders. I know that they love to help. Like at the end of the day, angels are everywhere. They might not even know that they're an angel. You might be an angel. I love that, Allison. I'm totally going to steal that. And it's true, but helpers are everywhere too. And Boston happens to be a really, I think, uniquely rich community of people. Yes, they want to be angel investors. They want to, invest in companies and make a nice return. But ultimately, they want to help you out. They want to make sure that you don't fall into the same holes that they fell into. And it's really just a question of asking, honestly. And people really are more receptive than you might think. Make the ask really small, and you might get a lot more than you would expect.
If I may, just to,
Please.
just double down on everything that Jody talked about. And there's also a risk not only of having, when there's sort of shallowness in a relationship with your advisors, but also if you have too many. When we see team slides as an example, and they go on for 2 pages, for instance, and there are a lot, it also communicates the fact that there hasn't been much thinking about what's necessary to get the idea moving forward, and that there may be, pardon the term, but dead weight. You might have heard that used in terms of like cap tables and where investors look and see who's on a cap table as they are thinking about investing in a company. So when you think about advisors, I think we overcomplicate this usually tremendously, in that we try to surround ourselves with fancy titles and the fancy schools, and we think that that's going to carry at the end of the day. But if there's not a direct connection on what each person serves in terms of how they mitigate some major aspect of risk, then it's wasted space and time, and frankly, a distraction to you. So that's where sort of overswinging, or the pendulum overswinging to having too many people involved also sort of is going to be a distraction for you, quite candidly, if that's real, and managing that. But also, I think it also communicates that there hasn't been enough clarity in thinking about what are the aspects that are essential. What do you bring and what do you need to have people with you bring to the table to get your idea launched and out into the field? And that if you haven't put that thought in, and it's not clear by how you talk about who the people are and what they're doing, it becomes very evident quickly that there's sort of just window dressing also. So there's sort of two sides of that coin.
Yeah, so the way I describe exactly that is you should be intentional. There's a difference between people who help you build your capital and who are actual advisors to your company. So an actual advisor, you should think through what are the functions that I need extra help in or I don't have the expertise in. And you should not have more than one advisor per function. And you go find those people. Right? I have a marketing advisor, I have a product advisor, I have a tech advisor. Specifically, those are areas I need help in. And then have your second qualifier. For me, it's do I feel more energized after I talk to you than when I started? If I feel drained, not a good advisor for me, right? So there's the functional element and then there's your fit element, and make it official. Use a FAST agreement, give them 0.25% equity, have it be structured so they actually benefit from your company succeeding and they have something in the game. You can have a ton more builder helpers, but have a formal board of advisors. And then they know why they're on your pitch deck slide.
Allison, what's a FAST agreement?
So you can just Google it. It's a free, you can just download it. It's a free agreement. I forget who, Founder Institute maybe? Or, I forget who originated it, but it's called the FAST agreement. It's a standard agreement that you can use for inviting somebody to be an official board advisor. Or not board advisor on your board of advisors.
Yeah, right on.
And maybe I'll sort of clarify. So typically board of advisors, so you have somebody who basically gives you the money, right? So then you have your board of advisor, your advisory board is what we're talking about
Yes.
now. So just that was the distinction we're making.
Yes, I fumbled that
No,
out.
no, no. Sorry.
Right.
Okay. Fast.
FAST.
Okay, so we've decided we want money. We now have some steps to know we're in a good process. We've got an advisory board and a board of advisors, right? We're sort of on the right track here. We're now 2 months into this process, right? And we're trying to assess sort of where we are. Paul, maybe you could talk a little bit about how do you know when it's not going well, and what do you do then?
Maybe I'm the wrong guy to ask because my first medical device startup I started over 15 years ago, and I'm still running it. So what that means is basically I had difficulty getting traction, I had difficulty raising money for it. So I sort of parked it on the back burner and went off and started other companies and built other ideas in the meanwhile, but I'm still tinkering with it. So that's what I mean by, and Sydney, this is a very important question, is this idea of sort of knowing when you are treading water and you're not making progress is very difficult for early stage entrepreneurs. And I've struggled with that. And I think a lot of, especially, by the way, my bias is usually science and engineering tech. I said that earlier. I mean, like hard tech is often what I do. That's my job now, is to work with scientists and faculty who are working on trying to get hard tech from labs out to market. So that's my bias, and I think it's especially rampant when you are a technologist also, and maybe get a little bit enamored with your technology as well. Then you start to lose clarity in thinking about, are you making progress and getting things built further on? So this is a very important question. It's very hard to say, here are the tricks and here are the signals that tell you when you are treading water. But a couple things that you certainly should have is the idea of discipline. Entrepreneurship is not sort of Wild West. I think we all sort of misperceive what really entrepreneurship is about in being a CEO. It's not really flying by the seat of your pants and, figuring it out every single day. There's an aspect of that. The aspect that it's very unstructured, but that's your job as the CEO of an early stage startup, is bringing as much structure and de-risking organization as you can, knowing that when you wake up tomorrow, you almost throw much of that organization and structure to the wind because assumptions have changed, the world has changed, something didn't work the way you wanted it to, and you as the entrepreneur have to figure out that sort of wiggle room to get your idea forward. So that's explicitly kind of, I think, how I've always thought about this problem, which is you need to have a plan. Again, as soon as you devise a plan, it becomes obsolete because the world changes. But in the absence of a plan, you're rudderless. You really have no direction where you're going, and you have no ability to know if you're heading in the right direction. So you have to have a plan, and that plan tells you sort of what are the milestones, and you need this obviously in the pitch deck that we were talking about earlier. You have to be able to convince somebody else. You know what the key big steps are, inflection points, milestones, whatever you want to call them. What are the key big steps that tell you this idea continues to gain forward momentum? So you need to figure out what those are, and you need to have a plan over the next months, and you need to plan. That's not only milestone, but that's a timing aspect of it. And then you hold your own feet to the fire. And that, by the way, is super hard to do. That's where I have failed in the past, and that's why you have an advisory board, as we talked about, but also maybe a personal advisory board. And a personal advisory board are people that know you, that will that know you, love you, want to support you in what you're doing. They may not have equity interest in what you're doing, but they will, someone that you can say, here's my plan, here's what I want to do. And when those milestones come, they're not going to let you sort of wiggle your way out of saying, you know what, that customer deal is just around the corner. I know I'm going to close it, so I just, in a few more months. And I'm telling you this because this is exactly what I did. I had customers in the palm of my hand for 1 month, 2 months, and then a year and a half. And then they ended up not closing. And that is a perpetual and common risk that you face at the early stage. So I'm sorry I'm belaboring this a little bit, but this idea of a planned milestones and holding your feet to the fire. And that's not to say that you pull the plug when you get to a milestone that you didn't hit, but that is to say that you bring the people that promise to hold your feet to the fire, that have their own expertise and can say, all right, why are you not on track? Is this something that we can get back on track in a reasonable form? And it's the right idea to try to get back on track. Or do we need to be on another track? Or, one of the conclusions is maybe it's the time to pull the plug. But that's something that's very difficult to do alone. So you have to have other people that you can rely on to hold your feet to the fire in that way and keep you honest, because this is why you will be a successful entrepreneur, is because you have that unfettered optimism to say that I'm going to make it happen, and that customer is going to come through that door, and I'm going to make it happen. That's the will that you bring to the table, but that also adds a little bit of blinder.
Yeah, and I'll Jody, Allison, I'm going to close out with a similar question, so no need to chime in on that one.
I spoke too much already on that one.
But you can see the enthusiasm right on this, right? It's trying to figure out where you are is really difficult, and so it's something where, I think at the beginning of the process you think, man, I'm going to get started, and then it's going to be all good. The middle of the process still takes some management as well, right? So maybe let's talk about the end of the process of, maybe some tactical hints on, you've done all this work, and what does it really take to close? Like, what does it feel like? And, how do you know you're sort of close to closing? Like, one of the hard things I always, frustrates me as an entrepreneur when, people say, sure, let me know when you have a lead, and we're happy to participate, right? Which everybody hears at some point. Maybe Allison and then Jody, maybe sort of speak to a little bit about what do you see when, maybe some tactical hints about closing and how to get people across the finish line.
Sure, I'm going to give a very Allison answer to this. So
That's what I hope.
the concept of closing also means that you plan to run a somewhat traditional round, right, where you're setting out to raise a certain amount in a certain amount of time. It's usually referred more to venture or maybe angel groups or a larger amount of angels. There's no rule that says you have to do that. I'll give you an example even of Scroobius. I've raised over $1 million on an open safe note for 5 years from aligned angels and impact investors, and I've said no to venture capital. That's how I want to run it. It's sustainable for me, and it's what I want to do based on my learnings from my first company where I did things the traditional way. So you can do what you want to do. It doesn't have to follow the textbook you're reading, and you don't have to close, and you don't need a lead. That lead is a very specific thing, mainly because someone is going to do all the diligence on you and other people want to follow because they don't want to do all the diligence. That's really what it means. But if you're raising from private wealth capital, from the angels everywhere, you don't need a lead depending on how much you're looking to raise and from who. So I do come back to understanding, who are you trying to close? Who is the check you're trying to get? Because if it's a fund, that's a very different thing. And happy to, we can all talk about what it means to actually get a fund to close. That's a particular process. But if you're just trying to get a person to close, that's different. And it can happen very quickly, and it varies by individual, because again, they're not a business, where a fund or an angel group or some kind of organization has a more structured process that you go through. But even then, at the end of the day, look, everyone is a person, and this is a relationship game. Whether you're talking to a GP or an investment committee, or you're talking to me or anybody up here who does private investing, you are talking to another person, and you need to figure out from them in a very human manner, what do you need to know? What do you need to know to close this? What's holding you back? What has to happen? What has to be true? And understand the other person instead of trying to force why you think it should be true. That's not going to get somebody to feel comfortable parting with their money for whatever their motivation is in doing it. But the other thing to always keep in mind as a founder is you will be told no so much more than you will be told yes. And you also get to choose. Investors don't make money if they don't invest. You get to choose who you make money for. There is a huge power imbalance in fundraising, particularly if you identify as underrepresented in some way. And I'm happy I brought them with me last year at this session. Someone just shouted at me, "Say the stats!" So I brought them all, which we can do in questions if you want. But
We will have Q&A right after this.
yeah, but always know, if you are uncomfortable, if you don't want to close this person, don't. Move on to the next person. There is a ton of capital out there. It is not worth your time to fight for capital if they're not looking to invest in you.
Well said, Allison. I might just, jump in maybe with the slightly more traditional route, although I applaud you for just recognizing that there are so many ways to think about this. And a thread I just really wanted to pull on is listening more than you talk, right? Listening to hear, what is this investor actually looking for? What does she want to gain from this? Is she looking just to, make a 10x in 2 years? All right, well, that's going to maybe be a little bit hard. They all want that, whatever. But if she wants to really help move the needle because she's passionate about this industry and she has a personal connection perhaps to ensuring that that problem is solved in a meaningful way, keep that going, really. Just try to think really thoughtfully about the cues that you're getting from the investors that you're speaking to. As far as I can run through a little bit of the sort of more traditional process from the side of an angel group in just, a minute or less if I can, just because that's the world that I do come from. These are individuals putting their own capital to work. As Allison referenced, they are not part of a fund. These are, regular people. A lot of them have been really fortunate in their lifetime to have been, at a positive exit. A lot of them have had very negative exits, and they can then share a lot of what they've learned along the way, but come at it from a real position of wanting to be a coach, a mentor, a helper, ultimately, even potentially sit on your board, sit next to you as you go through those ups and downs. But certainly as far as, these are people who want to write a check. So as an angel group, Launchpad is one of those groups that do like to lead. When you hear that phrase, as Allison indicated, it's one of those like, yeah, exactly. Call me when you've got a lead, Sydney, right? So what does that mean? It means there is an entity of some sort that wants to step up and say, we are going to put a lot of work into this to ensure that we can get this company over the finish line. And so if a company, for example, comes to Launchpad and they pitch and they're looking for $2 million, this Launchpad would, at least in theory, be able to produce at least half of that round and then syndicate it to other partners who would then come in on the round. We would do our due diligence, which means the best way to get to the end, sort of to talk about closing, is to come in as prepared as you possibly can for the questions that you're going to get. And we know these are super early companies and they've got a lot of unanswered questions. That's why we love them. That's why they're going to be, valued where they are, is because there is so much risk and there are so many unanswered questions. But as much as you can populate a data room before you get to the point where we're asking you those questions, just help yourselves by doing all of that as far in advance as you possibly can in order to make the process smooth. And then stay open-minded. For example, if you come in and you say, I want to raise $2 million so I can do, X, Y, and Z. We've all talked about hitting milestones, that's the point of investing, is to help you get to those milestones so that you can be more effective at growing your business and ultimately more attractive to an acquisition partner. But we might say, hey, you say you want to raise $2 million, but you could do a whole lot with 1 million. You could do a whole lot with 750K. As Allison said earlier, think about, do you really need to raise, and raise as little as possible, because then you have the opportunity to grow into your capital, to grow into your valuation at a rate that's going to really make sense for you. So I'm sorry to ramble, just some thoughts to consider.
Great. So I think that's the end of our structured questions. So we tried to go through the story arc of, you're thinking about raising capital and you have your process, and now you've sort of gotten to the closing. Would love to open it up to the audience, maybe for some questions. And I don't know if we have a microphone or something around, but, and I don't know if I'm the best selector, because so maybe if I could have some help selecting.
How about the Duke gentleman had his hand up first in the back?
Okay, great. Yeah.
Let's start there.
Hello, thank you all so much for being here. We're a young startup and we're looking at fundraising. And one thing you mentioned, Allison, is that it's very important to build a relationship with investors beforehand. Now, what I often hear is that people who raise, especially first-time founders, they might go to like 100 or even more venture capitalists in their efforts. So I have a little bit of trouble imagining what that's going to be like. So if, let's say we want to start raising early next year, how is that supposed to work to build relationships with all these people? And how much effort should one put into this? Because of course, every minute you spend building a relationship is a minute that you don't spend building the product, and so on and so forth. I'm a little bit confused by that.
Yeah, maybe I make it a little more succinct, just because it's a super broad question. I want to make sure we get as many as possible. So maybe we pick part of that and just think about how to think about the strategy around picking who you want to go after in terms of investors.
Yeah, absolutely. First, you're supposed to develop genuine relationships with 100 people. It's not hard, right? No. So the way that I like to talk about this is a lot of founders appropriately spend time building their ideal customer profile, right? Your ICP. You should have an ideal investor profile, and you should find those people. So map out for yourself, not just the fund, that's part of it as well. What if you're going after venture, like you noted, but who are the general partners at these funds? And you're trying to find people who would get what you're doing based on past investments, based on what career they had before they went into venture, where do they live, how do they understand the problem, do they talk about it publicly, build out your investor profile, your ideal investor profile, and go find those people and focus your time there. You're still gonna get more no's than you are yeses. This isn't a one-to-one, you're gonna get a check, but I ascribe to that, and I think it is worth the time up front versus a boil the ocean, just go meet with as many people as possible. I did that for 2 years, and I burned out so hard. That was not the right strategy, at least for me. So that's my best advice.
All right, maybe I'll do sections. It'll be easier for me. So I saw your hand in the back.
I'm wondering, Jody, or each of you could comment on this, and that is that I come from the view of a little bit opposite what you mentioned, Jody, which is, figure out how much you have to raise, and you don't have to usually raise as much as you think. And that is you usually have to raise a lot more than you think. The capital's going to burn a lot faster, and then you're going to be back out on the street trying to raise capital and realize, oh my God, this is crazy. So could you talk a little bit about how you probably need to raise a lot more, number one, and if you do, you got to target different people for that. And then if you're
Maybe we can stick with that one just because so we can get as many questions as well.
This one goes to it though. If you're going to raise more, it's a little counterintuitive or paradoxical, and that is oftentimes you can raise more and get a better valuation than when you raise less. So you're getting more money for a better valuation than the less. I had to add that in there.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, listen, your question, your point is well taken. And yes, certainly over the course of building the company, you're probably going to need to raise, several times. Okay. But I just think it's important that people think about a tranche of capital that is bite-sized, at least for their very first raise, if that's kind of the context of what we're talking about in this particular session, so that you can do the things that you say you're going to do without having given up, too much of your own, what you are going to either have to pay back if it's debt or giving up as far as equity. I think it's important that you give yourself enough space so that you can come back, and whether it's coming back to the same entity or to other entities. So, I mean, part of what we find important at Launchpad is syndicating with a lot of other groups and individual angels or family offices during that time of that first raise, getting a bunch of people into the pool so that they're hearing the story, they care about it, they're investors, then they're more likely to participate in a follow-on round. When the CEO inevitably comes back for capital, it's generally 12 to 18 months after that first round. So you're not always in a fundraising mode. I mean, it's hard because it is something that's going to be top of mind, but you want to be able to take that initial capital, go back and turn it into, really important things that are going to grow your company. But we understand that companies are often going to come back, whether it's to the angel groups or, at some points they are going to go on to different stages, to venture groups, private equity, et cetera. But, for what we're thinking about, you're right, is that they're going to need more, but I worry about people taking too much rather than too little personally from my observations. But I would share it with you guys.
I'll just say quickly that oftentimes, rule of thumb, you're right, is that you often run out of money, and it's difficult to make your milestone and your plan match the funding you raise. So that's often the case, which means you run out of money. But and this is a very tricky question to answer, because you fundamentally, it's very expensive money. Even if your round's oversubscribed, that means you're still taking more of the shirt off your back in your current round. So it's very expensive. So this is why oftentimes entrepreneurs make that sort of, if you want to call it a mistake, which is they take too little money and it doesn't get them, and they end up in not perpetual, but oftentimes you barely get a breath before you have to raise your next round. But you do that to preserve as much ownership and control of your company. That's not really an answer to your question, but that's the reason why you want to be very careful about taking too much also.
Section over here, I think you had his hand up first.
Yeah. So I think there's kind of something I want to address. So basically, let's especially with the advancement in with everything getting into everything being integrated with AI. I'm just taking this example because I'm in that space now where it's integrating AI with a legacy business, right? With a legacy process or a legacy legacy model. Now the thing is, there are investors investing in, for example, business process consulting, right? Your pure business process consulting firms, and there are investors who are investing in AI. Now, they're not mixing, right? So. And all of them are saying, okay, it's, we don't know how this works. We need at least 10 customers for us to believe that we can invest in you. How, as a first-time founder, how do you navigate in such kind of a scenario?
And could you address it to maybe one of the panelists, just in interest of time?
Jody, thank you.
Well, is the question about
I'm not
de-risking?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand it clearly enough.
So,
I would either defer.
May I just maybe a quick report? We do, obviously in an engineering school where we have a computer science department, we do a lot of applied AI ideas. And what I'll say is that maybe I think old school about this, but candidly, nothing has changed. By the way, the time where if you use the acronym AI in your pitch deck, you got funding, that's gone, right? So we're past that. There's always at the cusp of the wave, there's a little bit of that, fanaticism where everybody just wants to jump in because nobody understands it. But I think we're past that now. So you're not going to get funding just because you're clever enough to use the term AI in what you do. So let's start there. But then what does that mean? To your question, that means that the fundamentals haven't changed. Is that if you don't really understand the problem you're solving, and how you connect, what is your go-to-market? How do you plug something into an environment today? If you're dramatically changing protocols and you're adding a lot more steps, or you're adding another system on top of what is there, or the agentic aspect of what you're doing is very clunky or difficult to engage with in an environment, that these are old school problems that mean you're not going to get adoption. So I think you really don't need to think about these things dramatically different than we have before. We have the same fundamentals to apply to these new AI concepts. And you just have to be very clear about how they fit in. But the challenge with AI is you're going to have to also convince your customer, because in this world, I think it's still not clear to most of us, which is how do I protect myself from the downside of having an agent play an active role, and where do you draw the line, and how do you have safeguards? So it's that kind of aspect, which is you're going to have to convince that you can have impact with control. And that doesn't change.
All right, maybe middle section in the back.
Thank you all for being here and presenting today. Jody, you did mention earlier about how first-time founders should prepare themselves to answer questions about themselves and their startups. I was wondering if you could give us a few examples of some questions that that founders should be prepared for, or what areas about their startup or themselves that they should be prepared to answer questions about.
Sure. Briefly, we're looking for sort of why this, why you, why now. Okay, so that's I would say the crux of it, and that's going to get our attention. If you can have clarity and crispness around why you are uniquely able to solve for a real problem that people are clamoring for an answer to, that is going to be really at the end of the day what we're looking for. There's a lot of questions behind it, and I know Allison does an excellent job at Scroobius of helping you think through the questions that are going to be part of creating a deck that is going to be sensible. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're pitching or seeking investment funding, the investor who's coming in at an early stage, we're talking about early stage raising, which is the most risky, is that it is all about risk. So almost any question you're going to get is aimed at removing risk from the investment opportunity. So the more that you can come into it with your story constantly mitigating risk that what you're going to do is going to work if you get the capital required to make it so, will lead to a more effective meeting and conversation.
All right, maybe from this section in the back.
So I just want to say thank you to all of you, because I'm not a first-time founder, and some of the tidbits you're giving, I'm like, yes, I wish someone told me this when I started building years ago. And it goes back to what Allison said, just to reconfirm, the new startup that I'm co-founding with my co-founder in London, we got investment from a female investor who's Gen Z and who's in Italy. And everyone is an angel investor. And once you get that in your head, you understand it's actually not a waste of time to relationship build, because they literally carry your company forward. And I think angel funds, that is really the ideal space when you're in pre-seed to have those relationships, but really angel investors can move your idea along. And I can't emphasize that enough. It's such a critical thing. And so I'm so happy that you're telling first-time founders that, because you think you have to do this structure and Y Combinator and all these videos that teach you these things, but actually what you realize that your angel investors, your network, so your family and friends and some of your former colleagues, and just have a lot of conversations, because you just don't know. And I think what's exciting is I'm seeing a lot of Gen Z investing. And I'm seeing a lot more women investing. Why? Because a lot of money is now transferring, wealth is transferring to women now, and it's also transferring to Gen Z. So don't think Gen Zs can invest, because actually our first investor is female, and she's a Gen Z, because she had sitting a ton of cash, and she's like, I want to be an angel investor. I want to get into this world early. So it's a super exciting time. So thank you for the tidbits.
Hear, hear.
All right, so now I'll just pick randomly, which is a little more challenging. Right here in the front. Yeah.
Hi, great talk. And actually, kind of sidelining with that question, Allison, as you mentioned, there's kind of unique challenges being a female founder, or being a minority founder myself, kind of navigating that space. Could you talk maybe about tips and tricks on how to sort of navigate those challenges?
Sure. I'll give.
Break out the stats.
I'll try to be limited and give some. But I do, I don't, for anyone who knows me, I talk a lot about this and I put out a lot of content about the distribution of capital. And when we look at venture capital in particular, women nationally in the first half of 2025 got 0.8% of venture capital dollars. It's not just inequitable. And I say that not to discourage people. You can raise venture, but you should know what you're going into. You should have your eyes open. I did not know at my last company. I didn't know any of this. And that's why I went on the journey I did to figure it out and why I'm doing what I do now, to be informed. And there are a lot of things that you can be aware of and help when you're out there raising that, again, I didn't know. How bias shows up, because it's not that every GP is out there nefarious saying like, let's invite women in and shoot them down. It's not like that. But there is the systemic bias in that the majority of general partners are white men, and we as humans inherently see people who are like us as less risky. And that is a major reason for the imbalance. So if you go into these meetings and you can start picking up on things, there's some common stuff like prevention versus promotion questions, where women are overwhelmingly asked prevention questions, like why won't a competitor just come in and squash you? Why this? How are you going to do that? And it makes you on a defensive position, which equates to dollars lost in investment. If you can identify, I'm being asked a prevention question right now, I'm going to rephrase it and answer in the promotive. Huge difference in the tone of that meeting and your ability to develop that relationship. There's a lot of other things I can talk to, but this is also why I am so bullish on the private wealth capital class, because it is a much more diverse class. According to the latest research, 47% of angel investors are women, and and I think it was 47% of angel checks were written to women. It's almost like a 1-to-1 research out of New Hampshire, University of New Hampshire. But it's really considering the capital you need, who you're going to for that capital, and being able to say to yourself, I'm also going to vet the investor. So if it is venture, ask them. Say, when was the last time that you did fund an all women founding team, and what was the size of that check? And if it's never, maybe don't try to be the first. So you evaluate where you're going as well.
Okay, so maybe one more question, and then we'll do a rapid fire wrap up, just so you all are thinking about it. So, sure. It's a good sell.
That's my pitch.
It's an effective pitch.
Thank you. And on the board of advisors, should there be an investor?
For your advisory board?
Yes.
I'll let everybody else answer. I personally don't like if someone requires that they are an official advisor if they invest in you. I think that they are two different
No,
things.
if they're not investing in you, I'm specified. If they're not investing in you, just be an advisor. Is
that to me is
I
the
think
best.
that's very important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think then they are truly in it to help you. They're not in it for their own gain.
Well, they're in it for their equity being
yes,
priced
right,
something
right.
later on. But if someone
it's a
invests
different
in you,
relationship, yeah.
they should be your advisor anyway,
Anyhow,
right?
yeah.
Like if they invest in you, they should serve the same function because they're financially motivated to have your company succeed. So why do they also need to be an advisor? That should be reserved for people, again, who have the functional expertise that you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say the way, exactly. If they're already investing in you, they're already an advisor of yours, right? So typically the way to think about the advisory board is somebody who's a non-equity person, who might give you additional people on top of that. So.
But by the way, make sure you do that with intention. In other words, make sure there
Yep.
is a reason and purpose and value creating effort down the road why that person should be an advisor. So it should be your decision, is really what I'm saying. And you make that decision based on the needs of your startup. You with me? Yeah.
All right, so that rapid fire close out, I promised. Maybe we'll go in order. So maybe Allison, Paul, and Jody. Just a couple seconds on takeaways that audience you want them to leave with as they're leaving. Takeaways, real quick.
Okay. There's so many. I didn't think of one
Allison
beforehand.
gets to start.
I did give the warning before. So.
Fair. Okay, my takeaway is when you are fundraising and you're in these investor meetings and you're all anxious and worked up, care less. Just care less. If they don't want to invest in you, fine. You're going to go build a successful company, find the people who want to. Try not to get in your own head and so worked up and so anxious. Investors don't know better than you. You're building your company, you know what you want. Investors seem scary. You don't need anybody's money, particularly from that person. You're not a charity. You're not asking for donation. You get to pick. Care less. If the meeting's going bad, leave. And you know what? Once you start caring less, people want you more. And that was a big turning point for me.
This is also dating advice, by the way. If you guys, you came to the right place. If you're, yes, exactly. That's what you're doing is dating.
Yeah.
Listen, that's absolutely right on. And you said this earlier, by the way, is that many of you may not be accustomed to hearing no all the time. You will hear no chronically, and it can be very demoralizing. You've heard about sort of mental health and behavioral health issues when it comes to startup founders, because and those are real, and largely because you encounter challenge after challenge after challenge. That's why you are in this role and seat, but it's tough, and don't diminish that fact. And I think this is one way to also keep an eye on yourself, which is put a little bit of a shield there. This is a no to, this is not the right fit and the right angle. You got to figure out how to make the right fit and incrementally improve what you're doing so you find the right fit. Maybe the one thing that I'll say is that, and again, maybe a little bit of my background and bias, but what you're doing, we believe with AI that AI is going to create the first, unicorn single founder. Maybe so, but I think those kinds of ideas, we believe in doing things that have big impact. And if you're going to have big impact, and the ideas that you're pioneering, if you're here, I'm sure you are thinking about how you want to have big impact. And it's hard to do as a solo founder. So I think we've talked about this in so many different ways. We talked about how you bring on co-founders, how you expand your team, how you bring advisors. But the idea is that you need to sort of build your body, your bolus of support and advisory, and just people you can turn to when you need to have that conversation. And maybe it is, so that you don't care and someone can remind you of that. But this is an important thing, is figuring out how you bring the right ingredients to the table. And there are many flavors of it, whether that's a co-founder, and don't feel obligated that it has to fit in one particular role. But you need to have a team of people that help you get your ideas out. That's essential to being the most successful startups, to really have that element early on.
You guys have spoken so beautifully, and it's been fun to be on this panel and to meet all of you. So I'm grateful to everyone for being here and to being with both of you. I guess I would end on the thought around due diligence. What are we looking for in due diligence? What are you looking for when you due diligence us? Make sure you are really, I think several of us talked today about staying accountable, staying authentic, and really thinking about, what am I doing? Why do I need to raise money? Do I need to raise money? Of course, being the first question, but continue to explore. Am I talking to the right people? Are they the right fit for me? You should be calling references on us as much as we are calling references on you. And so I think that is, I think it's really important. You learn a lot from the small things too. You learn a lot in the little interactions with the investors, how they treat you. It should be with absolute respect and honoring your time. So really just keep your eyes open as you are doing due diligence and being diligenced.
Love it.
Amazing. Well, thank you. I'll turn it back over.
Thank you.
A huge thanks to our panelists. Thank you. Yeah, I just love the diversity that we've seen across the day today, and we've just had such amazing panelists, and I really appreciate your wisdom. And I think in several of the sessions today, we've heard of sort of the human factor of things, taking care of yourself and how you raise funds, making sure that it's the right fit. And we heard more of that earlier when it came to, I can't even remember, the term sheet and stuff like that, thinking about how you're going to do your cliffs and your options and, what's the human part of that? I think it's easy to forget. So for me, that's been a great part of today. I do want to make sure that I let you know that I will ask you all even more forcefully after this session to get out of the room because we are going to convert this room into a cocktail party space. So if you'll come back and join us at 6:30, we have an event sponsored by HPE and NVIDIA. And that'll be a lot more mingling, having those conversations, getting to know people as a human. In the meantime, while this is being set up, there are a lot of congregation points here on the first floor, but also if you go up to the fifth floor, it's just a great space to find little pockets of people to chat with. So if you're sticking around and you're just looking how you're going to kill the time while we get set up, the fifth floor is my favorite place. So that's probably where I'll end up. What else did I want to say? I noticed there were a lot of questions coming through on Slack about the startup showcase that's happening on Friday. That is a first come, first serve kind of thing. So you will have to line up on Friday morning to get your spot in the showcase. So I will have to double check.
That's old school. Old school. Bring your pen.
No, I want to say it's like 7 though. I'll see if I can find out the exact time. People came very early last year though, I will say. But watch on Slack for more information, or if you come up to me afterwards, I'll dig through Slack and give you the right information. Don't forget Kevin Ty is the photographer, and if you can get a moment of his time, you'll get like texts every time you're spotted in a picture that's being taken over the course of the event, which is really cool. And I think that's it. I will see you at the next session tomorrow, hopefully at the cocktail party tonight. And thank you again to our panelists. Great job.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yeah, thank
I'm
you.
going to run soon.
Great to
Hi.
see you. Yeah, that was
Awesome.
such fun to
Sit
be
with
on
you.
this
It's great. Hey, Ben.